And all these other shows are coming out saying they're privacy and security shows now. We need to find a way to, we always talk about that. But yet again, help me with our thing is not, it's not catchy enough. So
no, because we will get some crazy emails at that point.
We already do.
Oh, I know. This one would be like, my boyfriend left me for another. No.
No.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 362 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. Hey, if you're interested in starting your very own privacy and security program within your business, or maybe you have one and it's just not running the way you thought it would, you need to check out the PriceSec Bootcamp coming up September. Visit PriceSecBootcamp.com. We'll be covering things like supply chain management, how to prove it with documentation and training programs, policies and procedures. Also risky business, where you'll see me sliding into my underwear. And then lastly, we'll be covering Murphy's Law, because we all know no matter what you do, something will absolutely go wrong and you have to be prepared for it. So check that out at PriceSecBootcamp.com. Oh,
well, there you go. We should just clip that and have that as a running commercial.
You like that, huh?
You did good. We're in a hurry. You go right to the business.
Yep. Got to get to business. Get to business. So speaking of getting to business, time for the HIPAA.
Say what?
Yes, ma'am. Guess what time it is? It's end of life time.
End of life for Windows 8.
Yeah. So now is the time to start looking at your inventory to see, do you have any Windows 8 machines laying around? Because January 10, 2023, Windows 8 goes to rest. Oh, by the way, quietly passing away recently was Internet Explorer. You still using that?
Oh, yeah. Please don't, and there was a lot of folks writing software that still needed Internet Explorer. So if you're one of those, you got to deal with that as well.
Yep. And that's a now thing. So
Yes.
A couple things to look at in your organization. One, are you still using Internet Explorer? Because it is dead. And as those of us in IT like to say, it was the absolute best browser to use to download other browsers.
Yeah, it was.
And also, if you have any Windows 8 machines, you've got less than 6 months to get those replaced. So start planning now and getting those things replaced and get them out of the way.
See, and for those of you who don't understand, it is part of HIPAA that requires you to have procedures for guarding against detecting and reporting malicious software. And those vulnerabilities would prevent you from guarding against those attacks. So, yeah, it does say that. And they do interpret it that way. There have been cases in the past where the Office for Civil Rights has found that someone violated HIPAA because they were using end-of-life software that did not have security updates. It had vulnerabilities that couldn't be repaired, and they made no further security changes to protect it. Mm-hmm. So maybe if you're stuck there, then and we know that, and that part of that, why you end up stuck with those old operating systems, has to do with the 405D tip of the week.
Yeah. So medical device security. Yes.
Number 9.
This is the one I like, where people go, I know we're running something outdated, but we can't touch it. We can't change it. We can't update it.
Yeah. Or they say security, IT takes care of all of our security. Well, how do they touch that MRI machine you got back there? Do they deal with that ultrasound machine that you use? Well, no. Then they don't have all your security handled.
No, they don't.
Do they handle a lot of other things that you may be connecting?
Yeah. What about who's updating your Alexa devices?
I know, right? Who's making sure you've got those things managed properly? And it's I like to say, while 405D, it just says medical devices. I think that this is your, call to action for all connected devices that,
Oh, yeah.
That people don't lump in when you talk about cybersecurity. They're talking about mobile devices, servers, and computers, desktop, laptops, that kind of stuff. This is where everything else goes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's how we use it in my MSP. We take Hiccup and roll it out to non-healthcare clients. And the only thing we change is Practice 9, just to say all connected devices.
There you go.
All others. It's like, it's like number 18 in your 18 identifiers. It's like everything else we didn't cover.
All other identifying elements.
Yeah. So that's what this is. Like all other stuff. Anyway.
But, for years and years, people kind of kicked this to the curb on the medical devices. But I was just in New Orleans at a conference and was talking with a company that they go in and service medical devices. That's what they do. And I'm like, well, what are you doing about cybersecurity? We've been talking that we need to do more with that. Because all they do is, go in and fix them. And they're starting to have to be more involved in working with connected devices. So I had a great conversation with them because of that exactly. So knowing that this is only going to grow as more cool devices hit the market. Every time you turn around, there's another cool one.
Mm-hmm.
That is why it's an element, practice number 9 of the 10 practices. And it says for all organizations, when it comes to medical devices, they should fall under your endpoint protections. And most people are like, well, we can't touch those. Well, that's why they need their own little firewalls and network segmentation and make sure they don't use default passwords and all of those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
What else should we do, David?
Identity and access management. That's something we've talked about previously on other things, but certainly having the policies there for that, just like you do for your endpoints, but medical devices should have them as well.
Yeah. So it's the same, but different.
Mm-hmm. If you have any other kind of, MFA, multi-factor authentication you can put on there, that's a good thing to institute.
Mm-hmm. Anything you can do to limit anybody's ability to access that device and use it for nefarious. Use it for nefarious reasons. Thank you. I just had to do a small reboot right in there of the processing.
I just saw that Etch-a-Sketch clear itself. That was amazing.
Yeah, we're both pegged out today. You can tell we're both just got too many things on our mind. So, as you may have noticed, the things we've discussed so far about medical devices are treat them like any other device.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
Including asset management procedures.
Yep. Which we've already talked about asset management.
Yep. An
And guess
updated
what?
list of your hardware and software.
Yep. And the other point we've already talked about was create a vulnerability management program.
And
And
finally,
then lastly, add security terms to medical device management contracts that enable you to be able to hold device manufacturers accountable. Now, that's going to be a fun one.
yeah, I also think that, a lot of times when they're signing up for these devices and the number of times we hear like, we're going to buy one of those used. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
so, but there is more coming out with medical devices. The FDA is very much involved. And so there's a lot of changes coming down the pipe where there's things that medical device manufacturers are going to have to worry about. Usually it's like, look, we made this cool device. Is it secure? Oh, yeah, we're going to have to go do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you start buying these things, and we talk about this in relation to buying hardware, but we also talk about it in relation to bringing on vendors, which is look at the things before you purchase. look at the business associate agreement before you sign the dotted line. look at these contracts. These things you're trying to negotiate need to be first before you start looking at signing papers or sometimes even negotiating price, because there's no sense in trying to negotiate price if you can't even negotiate how you're going to deal with each other in terms of the rest of the contract or business associate agreement. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I had one recently where they didn't like my business associate agreement and I didn't like theirs, and neither one of us was going to budge. And so we just agreed to disagree and walk away. There was no need to talk about price and all this other stuff. We're not going to get past
same thing
this.
happened with me too. I mean, it was like, okay, well, you're going to tell me that you have 60 full days to let me know if anything goes wrong, and then I can fulfill my obligations with my clients. I'm like, you are so far disconnected from healthcare. I'm like, I'm out. But for the most part, it's begin at the beginning, not at the middle.
Right.
And that's the service level agreement of what if this thing goes down, how quick you're going to get it back up and running, as well as how you're going to secure it and protect things.
Yep.
So there you have it. Basically, don't forget that you have medical devices and other connected devices. Okay, then.
All right. So, we never talk about ransomware here on the show.
But I realize we haven't talked about it in a few episodes. It's been a while.
I think we purposely, tried to move away from it because we can't get away from it.
It's like, let me run away.
It's like every episode is about ransomware. We started out with this show being about HIPAA compliance, all those things. And then we went through this long stretch where it seemed like all we talked about was ransomware.
Yeah.
And because of all that, we ended up basically becoming a privacy and security show.
And all these other shows are coming out saying they're privacy and security shows now. We need to find a way to, we always talk about that. But yet again, help me with the air thing is not, it's not catchy enough. So
no, because we will get some crazy emails at that point.
We already do.
Oh, I know. This would be like, my boyfriend left me for no.
No. So as a segue between the devices and things, this is one of the things that is really big is from the ransomware perspective. I mean, think about, these ransomware gangs are trying all kinds of new things. And what if they tell you, they put a message on the screen that says, not only have we encrypted this, but we've also changed something on one of your devices. And let's say that you're several locations that are MRI facilities. One of your devices we have changed. Some of them we have encrypted. If you want them back and you want us to reverse what we've changed, here's how much it's going to cost you. And as we get better at blocking them and being prepared, they get better at attacking.
Yep.
So we had two different reports I was looking at. One is the Palo Alto report, the Unit 42 ransomware threat report. They're looking at information about the threat actors when they were on the ground responding, as well as looking at, the industry itself with the leak sites and what the operators are doing, their tactics and what demands they're making. And then Sophos released one that is a vendor agnostic survey. And I just plucked the US versions out of it instead of the global ones for us to compare. But it covers 500 IT professionals in mid-sized organizations in the U.S. So I thought, let's see what we learn out of the two of them. And, a lot of it seemed to be similar.
Yeah. Well, that's the great thing about going over multiple different reports, because we do this fairly frequently where we're saying this vendor put out a ransomware report. This other vendor put out a ransomware report. But what we're looking at is across all the different reports, kind of what are we seeing as a whole? Because that gives us a better view, not just the 500 and something from one report, but what is everybody seeing? And let's put all this data together And that gives us a better view of it. And so that's the reason why it's important to look at more than one report and report on it. So we're going to report on the report.
Well, there's 4 general topics. So we're going to talk about 4 stats, topics. I don't know what we'll end up calling it. 4 things of note. And the Unit 42 report had a lot more about the tactics that were being used. And one of their key things, and it's not new stuff, but it is reiterating some scary stuff that when you tie it all together, it's like you learn this piece and you learn this piece and you learn this piece. But when you put them all 3 together, sounds a lot more scary. But they are saying that in their review of 2020 to 2021, here are 3 areas where they have noted this increasing sophistication. So definitely the multi-extortion techniques where they're not just encrypting the files, but they're doing other things. Mm-hmm. Extremely prolific ransomware as a service business models. And we have explained these over and over, that it is a business and you sign up as an affiliate and they give you a startup kit and support services and suddenly you're a cyber criminal.
Yeah, you probably have a better onboarding process than I do.
Yeah, they do probably. They got more money behind them, that's for sure.
That's absolutely for sure.
Rapid weaponization of vulnerabilities. How quickly they're able to turn this stuff around. A lot of people will go, why don't these people get a job? It is their job.
Yeah.
They show up to work, with their little backpacks and go to work just like everybody else. Or, now they've adjusted like everybody else and do work from home maybe. Mm-hmm. But the important thing is their infrastructure and all those things are in place. And they also have things like business continuity and disaster recovery plans.
Yeah. And you figure in some parts of the world, you're like, hey, you can come to work for us and you can attack those nasty Americans. I
don't think they care who they're attacking. Is how much you going to pay me, brother?
Yeah. And we'll pay you well for attacking the nasty Americans.
Yeah. Some of them don't care where it landed. They just care about whether or not they're getting paid.
Yep.
For the most part, that's what the vast majority of these folks are.
Yeah.
That's just, how do I get a paycheck?
And if you think about how much money they're making, especially in certain parts of the world they're in, it's a tremendous amount. It's a good living here. It's a tremendous amount of money in some of those other areas of the world.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was scary and interesting at the same time is that in that change of techniques, not only are they doing the encryption and then threatening to leak the stuff, the leak started in 2019, right? This whole, we're going to threaten to leak. But now they're also saying, okay, well, if you quit negotiating with us, so if people are trying to frantically recover without paying, they're threatening to do a DDoS, and basically shut you down that way.
Wow.
And if you don't if you don't negotiate with them, then they start attacking you that way so that you can't recover, because until you come back to the table, they're not going to stop. So I know we've done it before. What is it that we explain these denial of service attacks? Distributed denial of service is what DDoS is. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's basically, think of it like the doorway of your home. There's only so many people that can come in and out of that doorway or of your business. So if I want to disrupt your business, I know that you can only have 1 or 2 people coming through your door at a time. So every 2 seconds you can get a person in there. But if I bring 1,000 people in there and I'm trying to get through your door all at one time with 1,000 people, guess what happens? Nobody gets in.
Or out.
Or out. Yeah, nothing happens because now I've done a denial of service attack where you're not going to service any of your customers because I've flooded your business. And they do that to your networks.
Oh, yeah. And it would make it as many people have converted and said, now we're going to have a plan for ransomware. Okay, but you better have a plan that says you're going to have somebody prepared to battle that. And it is an all-out battle.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things is change your IP address, but that's not easy.
No.
No.
And it's not quick.
But once you've been hit, that's not a bad idea.
No.
But it is something that you need to have now in your incident response plans, is that they could attack you and shut you down from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Just cram your doorway full and not let anybody come or go.
Yep.
So that is not good. But I was happy to see on the leaked sites review that they did, Unit 42 looking at those leaked sites because they actually go there. Interestingly enough, healthcare was not number one on those leaked sites.
Oh, this is like the first time it's ever not been number one.
I know, you usually expect it to be number one, but professional legal services is first, then construction, then wholesale and retail, and then healthcare.
Wow.
And what I'd like to point out is none of the other three have any regulations requiring them to do any security.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's what we call low-hanging fruit.
yeah. And then we get to healthcare. Healthcare, why is it way up there? Because we know that you're required to keep that data private.
Mm-hmm.
But when those other industries start to lock down, which we are seeing and we talk about, going back to the PriceSec boot camp at pricesecbootcamp.com, you also are starting to see all of these other industries being required to show that they are making these efforts, which we'll get to in a minute, how important that is. But 49% of all the stuff that Unit 42 reviewed, all the attacks that they in the U.S., 49%.
Oh, wow.
And we are by far, the ones that are most frequently hit. But this is the part that it was towards the end where they're talking about findings and recommendations and all of this. And we have links for you to go download those if you want to review them yourself. But this statement, it was one that I stared at for a while. And then I went back to, because, we said it's so much easier to manage security, particularly for small businesses, in the cloud. And, there's layers of security in the cloud. But you still have to secure the cloud. We're not saying that you don't have to secure it. And then I read this. Given the amount of valuable data in the cloud, yes, we know, it is only a matter of time before we see ransomware groups target cloud environments. However, to launch ransomware attacks in cloud environments, threat actors will likely use new TTPs. This their tactics and
Tactics,
but how they do
and
it.
Procedures.
There you go. And procedures. They have written procedures, which means organizations will need to be prepared to adjust their defensive approaches in turn.
Which, what we've said is, if you're doing what you did last year, is no longer good enough. We mention that all the time. You can't keep doing the same thing that you did before because tactics are changing and therefore you have to change.
And what you're doing now will not be enough next year.
That's right.
So you don't just do what gets you by the current techniques, because they're adding them and changing them and adapting. The more that we do to prevent it, the more often they will adapt accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that whole thing about we're barely getting people to do what they need to do today.
I know.
And many have found some level of protection through using the cloud. Great. But we need to be aware and understand that whatever you're doing today will not be enough later.
Yeah. So for all you folks that are like, but my data's in the cloud. My PHI is in the cloud. Or as one told me recently, my email's in the cloud. And I said, well, why aren't you using multi-factor authentication? Well, we'll consider it. Okay.
Yeah.
The one valuable piece of protection you have available to you, and you will think about it.
And it cost you nothing.
I know. It just blows my mind.
Yeah.
My desk has a permanent dent in it where I keep banging my head on it.
We'll have to put something soft in there eventually, but it'll take a while.
Yeah, but for those of you who are, around the industry and you're saying that, well, small providers can't afford it. Small providers can't afford it. I mean, even when it's free, they don't want to do it sometimes. So
that's a great statement that we will use later. All right. So the number 2 thing that we caught is the costs. The ransom demands keep rising. Not only the demand, but what people are paying. And predominantly the U.S. ransom demand in 2021 was $2.2 million. So that upfront demand was 144% increase from the average initial demand from 2020, which was $900,000. Now, the good news is they will negotiate.
Yeah.
And so the Unit 42 consultants, because again, they're just talking about their experience on the payment part. They were able, their average payment ended up being, when you had to pay, $541,000, which is still 78% higher than 2020.
That don't sound like a deal to me. But, I mean, it is.
It's less than 144% increase.
Yeah. I mean, given what it is, but gosh, I mean, that'll wipe out my savings account.
You think? I'm sure you could just stroke a check for it. But the good news is they will negotiate for significantly lower amounts if they're starting at like 2.2 million.
Yeah.
But that being said, they did have an interesting translation with the Conti group, which was one of the most prolific in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the content of that from the report, and it's their negotiations are really funny. and Gary Salmon's been on the show. He's told us about the case where he was trying to negotiate with somebody and they pop up on the screen, the cyber coverage, because he was trying to tell them they couldn't afford it. He's like, we're asking for exactly what your coverage will allow.
Okay.
Darn the luck. So, and Gary, okay. But it's interesting conversation where they're saying the money we can afford is $500,000. It's a huge amount for us. Please let us fix a deal, because they were saying that the price is $2 million. And then they're like, okay, well, we'll go down to $1.5 million.
Mm-hmm.
But the other communication, and when you read it, you're like, they have their own law firm?
Yeah, they say in the email it says that this is how they come up with their numbers here. They say, we have a big legal department and it checks all the possible data and sources and establishes an appropriate amount. We check your annual income, the value of your materials. We look to see if you have any sensitive and private files, military budgets, and so on. So, I mean, they do their homework. They're not just throwing a dart at the dartboard and picking a number. They know you are more likely to pay an amount that is based on data. And so that's what they're going to go after.
And then they say, please don't forget our decryption software and our expenses.
We have to cover our expenses.
Yeah. So we're only asking you to pay 5%.
Yeah. We're not making that much money.
But considering your situation, we'll give you a 20% discount. Our price is now $800,000.
So sweet.
Yeah. So, it's just, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I'm just glad that they're good, honest, hardworking criminals.
Yeah, they're honest criminals. Speaking of honest criminals, because one of the things, that was from the Unit 42, but the Sophos now, we're getting into those numbers, and the U.S. organizations that paid the ransom got back 59% of their data on average. Globally, 61% of the data was restored by those that paid the ransom, which is a slight reduction from 2020. So, yes, we will negotiate down, but you better know you ain't going to get everything back, more than likely.
Yeah. I don't think anybody in these reports got 100% of their data back.
I didn't see, you would think if that was the case, they would make sure that they said it, but they pointed out that only 59%, that's not good. They also, in Sophos, similar dollar amounts when it came to the ransoms, because they were like 87 of the 500 paid the ransom, and the average payment that people shared in the survey was roughly $130,000, while 23% paid between 100 and 500,000, and 10% paid more than 500,000. So these are medium-sized companies, whereas Unit 42 doesn't say so. But these numbers bear out with the global average payment of $812,360. Ba-ching. And a threefold increase in the percentage paying $1 million or more. 4% who paid over $1 million in 2020. It's now at 11% in 2021. And you wonder why they don't get a different kind of job.
Yeah. It's growing at a nice clip.
Yeah. So, but they did say that the average bill to recover from the attack in 2021 was $1.08 million, and a considerable decrease from 2.09. I'm sorry, neither one of those numbers are good as far as I'm concerned. So, that being said, let's get on to the third item, is the recovery pieces that we learned about it. Anyway, that's taking us into the recovery of what it cost to recover. And I thought 89% says the ransomware attack impacted their ability to operate.
Yeah, I would think so. I
Really?
don't think it'd be at 100%.
How did it not impact? You really weren't. I don't know. I got nothing.
Yeah. That's 11% of people going, uh-huh.
But the amount of time it took to recover, that. So I always tell people, you're not putting into your incident response plan the time it will take you to recover. You're, oh yeah, we'll go to paper. First of all, let's think that through. Whole nother episode. But
or my IT company says they can have us back up and running within an hour.
Yeah, there you go. So it took an average of 1 month to recover.
Ooh, on average.
On average.
Which means those who are most prepared has a lower number. Those who are least prepared have a higher number. Yeah,
one would think. One would think that might be the scenario. You're a thinking man there, David. But for the most part, in the end, that recovery time is not a short number. Some of them took 2 or 3 months to recover in this thing. So for the most part, do not assume that you will be back up within an hour.
So what about those who just say, I got insurance to handle all that?
Yeah, that was interesting, because it says what happened was they said 78% of U.S. organizations have cyber insurance that covers them if hit by ransomware. Globally, it's 83%. And so the insurance paid out in 96% of the U.S. ransomware claims. So most of the time, that's what they're relying on, right? However, the bigger news is that, as we have mentioned before, they are seeing that it's getting harder and harder to get that coverage.
Yeah. There's Sophos says 93% reported that it's harder to secure cyber insurance coverage than it was just a year ago. They're saying that the level of cybersecurity needed to qualify for the insurance is higher, which we are definitely seeing in our business. We're having clients ask us all the time to, look at this cyber liability assessment. And I'm like, wow, 2 years ago it was answer these 5 questions. Now here's a 5-page assessment you have to fill out.
Oh yeah. And they ain't playing no more.
Yeah. The policies are more complex. Process takes a lot longer. It's more expensive and often less coverage. So I think the insurance industry have, they came out with this thing and it was great. And then they got hit a few times and were like, okay, all right, we can't do this.
Well, I mean, if you look and they're paying out 96% of the time that the ransomware is occurring.
Yeah.
And on that, 81% reported that the insurance paid the cost to get them up and running again.
It's expensive.
And 35 said they paid the ransom. And so, again, the insurance companies are paying out left and right, and that's not what insurance companies are in business to do, is pay. So you're really seeing that, and that level of requirements is growing. And I've been just randomly polling any of the the brokers that you meet at the conferences, and they're seeing people get denied for coverage. They're seeing people get their claims denied because they're not doing it. And the most entertaining to me, to end us on, is people who suddenly started coming to our exhibit booth saying, I didn't really think I needed your stuff until I had to fill out this cyber coverage questionnaire. And I think, I'm going to need you to do some stuff because I don't know what some of that is. And my question that I did not ask because I did not want to know, but I do want to know, is did you say yeah? And now you're coming and ask me to do it?
Most likely.
Yeah.
Can you backdate this assessment?
But the big picture is it's not getting better. Ransomware's not going away. It's evolving. And don't count on insurance to get you there.
That's right. All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Remember, for Donna and myself, the HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.